Welcome. Why would a man who's the founder of 3 oil companies and was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Business Magazine be so passionate about Texas history? Well, J.P. Bryan is here to tell us exactly why that is. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be here today.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I know you're speaking for Tom Lee Month, but we're going to kind of broaden the scope of what we talk about today to take advantage of the wealth of knowledge that you have related to Texas history and a lot of other things.
Okay.
As a boy, you had this motto kind of drilled into you: serve those things that serve your interests and your self-interests. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I think...
And not your self-interest, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Not yourself. Yes, I think it's much easier to be a meaningful contributor if you truly love and have passion for the things that you're giving to or supporting in life. And so that just says there are lots of causes that people are going to ask you to give to or serve, but if they really don't strike a chord of interest, then my suggestion is go to the one that does.
Yeah, right. Now, so you have really fashioned your life in that way, that you've served the things that are interesting to you, that you're passionate about, and you kind of have forgotten about yourself and what you're going to get out of it, but just poured yourself out for serving others, both in the business arena as well as in the philanthropic arena, the art world and the historical world. Is that?
Sure. I don't want it to leave the impression that this is like anything in life, that I don't have selfish interest in it.
Yeah.
It's just that when you give to something you really care about, you don't feel the same need to be recognized. You don't feel the need to be applauded. What your enjoyment comes more from seeing the organization succeed and being able every day to, or regularly anyway, to be able to be a part of something you love.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is, I think, a challenge for a lot of philanthropic organizations or organizations that are trying to accomplish something, that people, you know, are giving out of the kind of the wrong motivation, the wrong heart. And so you're saying, have your heart in the right place, and then the rest of it is not, the negative things are not going to be there, where you're looking for that recognition, you're looking for the political benefit and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But it's more than just your heart, it's your heart and your mind.
Yeah.
Because you're frequently going to be touched by things, emotionally by things. Yeah. But you need to reflect on, okay, longer term, is this something I really want to support?
Right.
Of the moment you might say, oh my gosh, yes, it sounds like such a worthy cause. But it's probably not something that for you has legs to it. You would prefer to stay focused on something, or you should anyway, in my opinion, stay focused on something that truly you love doing.
And pour your time, energy, and resources into that.
Correct.
And you've done exactly that, actually, with a number of projects, some which are pretty big and far-reaching, and some that are just one hotel. So can you tell us a little bit about how you've lived that out?
Well, yes. I mean, I've tried to stick with the things associated with the state of Texas for the largest part. I've been involved in a number of historical organizations, tried to serve them the best I could, and it's truly been a rewarding life. I think I've contributed something of importance to them, and I know I've gotten a lot in terms of just the enjoyment.
Now, you have a museum that actually reflects your passion about the history of Texas, the Torch Museum. What is the collection?
Well, it's called the Visions of the West, and what it's designed to do is to visually show the people that come and attend or view the items there. What was the settlement of the West all about? You have a visual opportunity to see it, or experience, I should say. And we bring school children there on a regular basis and expose them to it, because if you ask school children, what do you think of history? Almost universally, they'll say, it's boring. Well, it truly isn't boring. If it is boring, it's because the text that they're using is boring, or the teachers are not inspired to give them the right message. But history is exciting stuff. It's high adventure. And so we try to present it in a format where they can enjoy it.
What are some of your favorite stories from history that you've uncovered in all of the things that you've studied about settlement of the West in Texas? Is there a particular story that stands out to you since you're a sixth-generation Texan?
Well, you know, I think there's a universal story of human values displayed. You know, you can see the worst and best of people if you look back through history, but what you consistently see displayed by those people who came to Texas, they came in search of a better life and a better opportunity. And in trying to obtain that, they made some incredible sacrifices. And they did it with no assurance that they were going to get anything in return for it. They truly put their lives on the line frequently. And you just have to have great sympathy for these pioneers who were just, you know, out here with very little support, especially the wives who, you know, were frequently left for a long time by themselves. They were women of incredible will and provided enormous support, but their husbands sure didn't shirk, you know, an opportunity to serve or even sacrifice for the freedoms that they all. So I think that's the key component. And
so it's the stories of those, the anonymous pioneers who came and sacrificed their lives and left the comforts behind and eked out an existence.
There are literally thousands of heroes, visible and invisible, that made our history.
Yeah, right.
And there's some, you know, very obvious ones. I mean, we have the greatest history of any state in the Union. Any empirical evidence on that? Well, more books have been written about the history of Texas than all the other states in the Union combined.
Right. Yeah, that's an amazing fact, that more books than any other state in the Union combined. And so, you know, Texas has been so reviled and revered. And so why does Texas evoke so much emotion, not only for Texans, but also for people outside of Texas?
Well, you know, first of all, I think we're often accused of bragging. We used to talk about the fact we're the largest state. That was unfortunate because that's not what makes Texas great. It's so many more complex issues, but we're the only state in the Union that was a separate nation. For 10 years, we were the only state in the Union that had its own Declaration of Independence, the only state that had its own Army, Navy, Postal Service, diplomatic recognition around the world. The cattle drive started in Texas. That is the most unique and romantic chapter in all American history. All those cowboys that went up the trail, I don't care where they were from, they were all called Texans.
Right.
So, I mean, and then the oil industry, its foundations were in Texas. So, space, when we decided to go to outer space, they set up the Space Center in Texas.
Right.
So Texas has always been on the cutting edge of exploration. And if we even go back further, remember that Texas was being explored by the Spanish 100 years before the English ever hit the east coast of the United States, or the Pilgrims put their little feet on Plymouth Rock.
And of course, we know we had the first Thanksgiving here in El Paso anyway, right?
Exactly,
yeah,
of course.
So we're way
well
ahead
before
there.
them.
Right, exactly. So how is Texas unique from even the other larger states? You know, what makes us different?
Well, as I said, their history, but think about something else. In many ways, we are as much Catholic Spanish as we are Anglo-Protestant. Many of our rivers, towns, geologic structures have Spanish names. A lot of our law, especially that relates to land and water rights, are all interpreted under Spanish law.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and for 300 years, I mean, we were part of Spain. So we have missions here that, you know, not far from El Paso, as a matter of fact, Isleta. So we have a terrific connection as a state with a whole different culture that's obviously part of our culture. Our ranching heritage, all of it came from the Spanish-Mexican connection.
Yeah. Well, what do you think has been Texas's biggest contribution to U.S. history? Could you identify one
Well,
thing? Or?
I mean, yes, certainly. That we own today, well, you know, there are those who would see it probably differently, but in terms of whether it was part of manifest destiny or if it was just selfish intent to expand our boundaries. But clearly, the acquisition of 330 million acres of land stretching from the Sabine River to the Pacific Ocean was a result of the Texas Revolution. So we as a state, for a time as a nation, were directly responsible for the United States spreading its reach from sea to shining sea. No doubt about it.
I had no idea.
Yeah, our freedom from Mexico as a separate nation, and then the annexation of the United States caused the Mexican-American War to evolve, and through that we won the war and acquired all the land that, you know, acquired Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, California, and acquired California right before the gold rush. So it gave the United States the natural resources to build the most prosperous nation in the world.
So that is a rather significant contribution, I would say.
Yeah, nobody else can come close.
And we had that's something to be proud of,
Yeah.
definitely. So what to you, since you're the president of the Texas State Historical Association?
I was.
You were. Oh, well, okay. And what is the most interesting period in Texas history to you? Can you?
Yes. Well, the most dramatic in terms of everything being sort of hanging in the balance would have had to have been the period of the Texas Revolution, which was 1836. Well, actually, there are two. I'll mention the second one quickly. But it would be 36 when we were engaged in war, actively engaged in war with Mexico. Their General Santa Anna and his invading army had enjoyed nothing but success early on. They had defeated all our forces at the Alamo and Goliad, had killed or taken captive, which then were later executed, more than 1,000 men. And so things looked very bleak. It looked as though the Mexicans, who had invaded with an army of 6,000, and best we could muster were a couple thousand, were going to succeed. And we were going to be, you know, back under Mexico's rule again. But unfortunately for us, we were successful at the Battle of San Jacinto, and that was a seminal battle, one of the three most important battles in the United States history in terms of fought on this land, or our country, and one of the 16 most important battles in world history. So that was the most exciting time.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think there's anything for us that live today that's more exciting than seeing what's happened in the oil business. The oil business is peopled by those that were very much of the same kind of entrepreneurial spirit as the pioneers that came here. They took great risk and got great reward, and the state's been very prosperous as a result of it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's certainly true, and with all that's going on in the whole oil industry now, with Canada and the Gulf Coast and all that, Texas has an even more important role, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. What's the darkest period of Texas's history?
Well, you know, certainly I think for every state in the South, the days after the Civil War, there was the economies were all devastated. Men came home or seriously wounded, or they didn't come home at all. So families were devastated. There was no evidence that there was an easy route to economic recovery. So, you know, we did not, however, suffer to the same degree that the rest of the South did, because the North had never successfully invaded Texas. Just another little piece of history.
Another little tidbit there.
5 times they tried, and every
really?
time they were miserably defeated.
Oh, there you go.
For them, anyway.
Okay.
But we then, you know, then came the trail drives and the cattle. 20 million head of cattle moved from deep South Texas to markets north and east. Restored the economy of Texas and allowed us then to build a thriving state, a state economy, and then suddenly in came the oil business.
Yeah, but one fortuitous circumstance after another. I never thought of the fact that cattle driving was an invention.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
It was.
what did people do before? They just worked with what they had where they were, and or how does
Well,
that?
you know, there was really no need to drive cattle long distance until there was certainly a lot more settlement in the western part of it, because you were taking the beef to market, and so normally it was there just to satisfy local need. There were a couple of cattle drives actually early. The hero of the American Revolution. Most people don't know that Texans participated in the American Revolution in a very significant way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bernardo de Galvez, from whom Galveston Island's name, was the then governor of Texas. He took an army up the coast of the United States, the Gulf Coast, defeated the British at Mobile Bay, then later defeated them at Pensacola, which was a seminal battle, protected Washington's southern flank, and was actually one of the signers of the final treaty between England and the United States. So quite a remarkable man, and but for him, there's good reason to think that Washington would never have been successful.
Of course.
Yeah, another Texan,
Another Texan
doing his job.
Yeah, that's right, saving the world. Okay, so what is it about Texas that breeds these giants?
I think it's part of our it's part of our history. I believe that we all realize, at least those who have studied our history and have lived close to it, that we have a certain responsibility to pass on to future generations. We need to do our part to support our state, and we need to be energized by the history that we all have. Children, adults, everybody's looking for heroes. And unfortunately, we turn to some pretty vacant examples of people who we've chosen to be our role models in life. When we've got a whole, over 300 years of people's noble service to higher cause, and in this state most especially. Why we don't spend time understanding them. They're not without their flaws. We all are.
Right.
But they've done some very noble things, and there's no reason to think that they're heroic and romanticized and not real. They are true, examples of human sacrifice.
Right. Well, your great-great-grandfather was Stephen Austin, is that right?
Uncle.
Uncle, right, okay.
Right.
Uncle, well, and so who would you say is the most interesting person in Texas history? Would you say he was, or somebody else?
Well, I'd like to say he was, because he's a relative. And he did some remarkable things, but I would quickly tell you that there's no doubt who that person is. It's Sam Houston.
Oh, okay.
He was not a Texan by birth, but as he liked to say, he was a Texan not by chance, but by choice. And he certainly made an enormous name for himself here. He's the only person who was a governor of 2 states. He was a governor of both Tennessee and Texas. He was the president twice elected president of the Republic of Texas, twice elected United States Senator from Texas, and twice the governor of Texas. So he served in very important political roles. He was the hero of the Battle of San Jacinto. He was married 3 times in his life, and all of his marriages, as with everything associated with Houston, were not without their drama. And so he's a guy that created a lot of activity wherever he went.
Good, bad, or
good and
indifferent.
bad.
Yeah, right.
He was a serious alcoholic early in his life, and when he got to his 3rd marriage, his wife, who was a strong Baptist, influenced him to give up drinking. So.
Right. Well, behind every great man is a great woman. So that was true for him. What do you think is the psychology of a Texan?
Well, I would say we've got a variety of people that could represent all psychological characterizations.
Right.
But I think the real psychology is they're proud to be a Texan. And if you go someplace abroad and they say, "Where are you from?" You don't say from the United States, you say Texas. And I'm just glad I can say I'm from Texas and not like say Iowa.
Yeah, right.
Not to offend anybody, but it's because we have a wonderful history, and I think that's part of it. I think that people don't always know why they're proud to be a Texan, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Some people just think it was because we were at one time the biggest state in the Union. I was glad we got past that.
Yeah.
Because it forced people to say, well, is there anything else that distinguishes us?
Right.
Other than the fact that we were bigger?
Yeah.
So there is, of course.
Now, when you think about Texas, and it seems to have had some very unique purposes that it served, sort of was destined to serve. Would you say that Texas still has a unique purpose as the trajectory of history goes forward?
We're of course going to get into, you can't answer that question without getting into sort of a political discussion. But at the core of our success in Texas today, I believe it's because we have remained a state where government has kept its heavy hand off of enterprise. And it has allowed free enterprise to exercise the opportunities available to it. That's not to say that free enterprise or people themselves don't do wrong things in business just like they do wrong things in life. But no one has yet demonstrated on a national basis in this country or in other countries around the world that socialism is the answer. We created in this country through basic exercise of principles of freedom, which demand that you're responsible at the same time. If you're going to have the freedom, you need to use it properly.
Right.
But we've achieved things like no other country in the world.
Right.
And Texas, I think, still exemplifies that.
Right. And whereas some other states are not so much so. We won't name them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Historically, what do you think about, we've had an interesting relationship with Mexico, right?
Yes.
I mean, and how do you think that has evolved over time? Where do you think we are with that now?
Well, I think, unfortunately, everything today with our relations with Mexico are colored by our problems with the border, which is very sad, because it would have been solved simply by allowing the people who want to come work here. And we can't deny for a second that we need them here to work. But unfortunately, we didn't do that for whatever political reasons that we don't need to discuss. But if we just give them work cards, now we're trying to protect them from coming in here illegally, and so their issues spill over on both sides.
Right.
A lot of passion about this, of course.
Sure.
And I think it's terribly unfortunate because, to me, even though there are things that the legitimate complaints that people in Mexico have, just like we have legitimate complaints against them, I think we're very friendly as two nations, and I think we share a lot of the same history. We share, a lot of people in this state are Catholic.
Sure.
And we know where that religion came from. It didn't come from England.
Right.
And we have a lot of laws, as I mentioned earlier, that are the same. So I think we share a common culture in many ways. So we have more attachment, certainly, to the Mexican culture in Texas than we do to the English.
It's an interesting thought and an interesting way of looking at things. That's for sure.
That's not totally true, but and look at our population. I mean, my goodness, we're probably 30% or so Mexican in our culture right now.
Yeah. What do you think is God's redemptive purpose for Texas? This is a big question.
Well, I think God's redemptive purpose is, I don't think he has a purpose for any nation. I think his only interests are the people in the nation. I think God's relationship is with people individually. It's not with nations collectively. And so he looks upon a group of people that he might choose to bless only because they've turned to him. And so he answers them. So I think there are a lot of people in this state that still are, you would say, God-fearing or God-loving people, and I think that God blesses that.
Well, that's a good note to end on, and thank you very much.
Sure.
Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. So Has your identity as a Texan been enriched when you realize that our identity is built brick by brick on the personalities and passions of those who went before us? Well, what insights have you gained about Texas as a result of our time with J.P. Bryan? Please tell us on Twitter, Facebook, or our website. Thank you so much for watching.